Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched Supacell. Let's talk about it. So Supacell is a Netflix series that was created by Rapman, who also created and directed Blue Story from a couple of years back. And this series is centered on a group of Black South Londoners who find themselves with superpowers all of a sudden and are on the run from a dangerous secret organization that seeks to control all of the people that have these superpowers. So this is essentially a series about superheroes in South London. Listen, the way that I got so excited when I saw that this series was coming to Netflix a couple of months back, I had this on my watch list for ages. And then guess what? Last week it dropped on Netflix and I didn't even realize because I was too busy wrapped up in the drama that was The Bear season 3. And so unfortunately I didn't check out the series until this past week. But I did check it out. And listen, you know what they say, better late than never. I can't wait to dive into my thoughts on this one in today's video. But before I do that, as per usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. Now without further ado guys, let's get into my thoughts on Supacell. So we're going to be diving into my quick thoughts on each of the main characters, our main South London superheroes in this review. But first up, just overall, I wanted to say that this series makes me so happy to be alive right now here in 2024. As someone who loves media, as someone who loves films, TV shows, superhero stuff, okay, even though I'm a little bit sick of what Hollywood is pumping out at the moment, but I still love all of this stuff and it just makes me so happy that I get to experience it here right now in this day and age, because look how far we've come. We have a superhero series that is centered on Black Londoners. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? And it's on netflix.com. It just brings me such joy. And we don't even need to go too far back in history. Like even when I started this channel in 2019, the existence of this show would have been a huge shock. And now here we are, we have a series that is centered on these Black characters, that has these sci-fi supernatural elements to it, and that is executed brilliantly. We'll discuss, okay? And just, it makes me so happy. It makes me so happy. As someone who for years has talked about the diversification of representation of Black people in media, this is exactly what I was talking about. We're no longer just doing slave stories. We're no longer just doing butlers or maids or, you know, Black people suffering in those ways. Now we're getting into different niches. Now we're getting into different subgenres. We had Jordan Peele pave the way with this horror film in Get Out that dove into the Black experience from that angle. And then he continued on with Us and Nope. And then of course in the superhero space, we've had Black Panther, we've had Luke Cage, which I think was a huge influence on this series, as was Misfits back in the back in the day, which did similar things to what this series achieves as well. And then more recently, we've had an upsurge of Afro-surrealism, which is something that I've discussed on this channel as well. We look to examples like Atlanta, like I'm a Virgo from last year, and of course, They Cloned Tyrone, which is also a netflix.com production, and that bears a large resemblance to this series as well. So when you look at the broad picture of what we have when it comes to modern day Black representation in film and television, it just brings me so much joy, so much happiness and excitement for the direction that we're going in with this representation. And I'm just delighted to see a series that is centered on Black characters, but not just Black characters from South London. Black characters from South London, and I'm a Londoner, but I'm actually a North Londoner. And of course, as a fellow Londoner, this brings me such joy. So I just wanted to say that up front. Okay, I'm really excited about the existence of this series. Maybe that makes me a little bit biased, but just so you know, this is really, really exciting times for me. Okay, so now that I said my piece, let's dive into the main characters of the show. Now, like I said, the whole premise of this series is that we see that there are certain black people in London who have started to develop superpowers, and it turns out that it's a result of them being related to one or more parents who have sickle cell, and that sickle cell gene is mutated somehow, and that's how they end up with the Supacell, get it? The Supacell gene that gives them these superpowers, which can become activated, especially when they come into contact with other people who have these powers. And we of course see our main gang, okay, the main group of Supacell superheroes, and they come across each other in various different times, in various different ways, and that's when we see their powers become activated. And so first one up we have is Michael, who is this delivery guy. You know, he does his deliveries in the South London area, and he is deeply, madly in love with his girlfriend from secondary school. How adorable. Who's called Dionne, and they're just living life. You know, when we're first introduced to Michael and Dionne, there's a bit of a role play situation going on where Michael is, you know, catcalling her, and at first I'm like, leave her alone. Leave her alone. But of course it turns out that it's just part of their little game, and she gets into her brand new cobalt blue BMW, which they're somehow able to afford on their delivery driver and social worker salaries, to say nothing of their house, to say nothing of the mortgage that they somehow got on that house, okay? But all is well when it comes to Michael's life at the beginning, until he finds himself shooting across the space-time continuum 3 months into the future, where there seems to be some kind of apocalypse that's taken place, and he sees future versions of himself and his future teammates, and future him tells him that he needs to go find the rest of the team immediately. And then he finds himself standing in front of Dionne's grave, showing that she is due to die in 3 months' time, and all hell breaks loose from there. And so this sets Michael on a mission to try and find the rest of the gang that he saw in the future, in the hopes that somehow they could help him prevent this disastrous inevitability of Dionne dying in 3 months' time. Now, when it comes to Michael's storyline, if I was ranking the different storylines of the Supacell superheroes, I would say that he was near the bottom for me. Overall, I still enjoyed his storyline. I still very much enjoyed Tosin Cole's performance and his portrayal of Michael. I thought he was brilliant in the role. But Michael was just really annoying because he refused to tell Dionne the truth. He refused to tell Dionne that she was due to die in 3 months' time. And whilst I completely understand, I empathize. I empathize that it must have been so hard for him to hold on to this secret. What a burden. Obviously, it's really sad, and he was really emotionally conflicted. Oh, I completely get it. I understand. But as a viewer, watching it, it was just so frustrating to see him umming and ahhing and refusing to tell her the truth. And on his path of trying to rectify the situation and prevent this inevitability of Dionne dying in 3 months' time, he was somehow hell-bent and also destroying his relationship. And so that was really frustrating to see as an audience member, and that's what made Michael a little bit of an annoying character for me. And not to mention, I don't think that they presented enough of a leadership quality in him. He is really powerful. He does have these really impressive powers of teleportation and being able to travel across the space-time continuum, as I said. So that makes him a really great candidate for being the leader of this group. But when it came to his personality, when it came to the way that he was written, I think they could have done a better job of presenting him as the clear leader, because we also have some great contenders for leadership here, and I think Michael needed to stand out a little bit more. Now, another side of Michael's story is that his mother has sickle cell anemia, and this is an illness that affects a lot of black people all across the world. And what I really loved about this series was the fact that it highlighted this, it spotlighted this issue that exists in the black community globally. I thought it was a really clever way of injecting some reality and grounding this superhero show, whilst giving us some really important social commentary about healthcare, about, you know, research into medical conditions that particularly affect the BAME or POC community across the world. So brilliant commentary there. The fact that the Supacell is connected to sickle cell anemia, it's no accident. It's just really strong writing on Rapman's part. And this, of course, also drives the story forward because Michael ends up getting a place for his mum in this like bespoke research facility. And unbeknownst to him, this is the same facility that is trying to gather up all of the Supacell superheroes and control them. Now, right beside Michael, we also, of course, have Dionne, who is portrayed by the icon, the legend, Adelaide, who I was introduced to through Some Girls many years back, but she's back here again on my screen. She was also back on my screen when I watched The Responder recently, because season 2 came out, and she's great there as well. But she's absolutely brilliant here. She portrays this social worker who does some digging into the missing black people that have disappeared in thin air in South London, and she's the one that's able to kind of connect some of these dots together and find out a bit more about the location of this secret facility. Now, it is really frustrating to see the arguments between her and Michael, the fact that they just can't seem to listen to each other. Again, obviously it's part of the show. You have to introduce conflict in their relationship that was at the beginning so perfect. It was too good to be true. So yeah, it makes sense that they went down that road, but man, was it annoying and frustrating to watch, especially when Michael started getting rude and loud. I was like, no. Not too much now, not too much of my sister, okay? But all that because he didn't want her to know that she was gonna die in 3 months. And like, he should have just told her. Like, he should have just told her. But I get it, but I don't know. Now, of course, in the end, it doesn't even matter because unfortunately, Dionne's due date is pushed up a few months. She ends up dying by the hands of Krazy, who, we will discuss in a second. But yeah, it was really heartbreaking to see. Obviously, Michael does have the power of time travel, so maybe we'll see, you know, Michael go back in time and try and save his girlfriend, like Iris in the Flash style. We shall see. But in the meantime, as it stands, it was really sad, especially because Michael had just told her the truth and she had come to terms with it and was really upset. But she was still willing to do the right thing and go into A-Town, that hellhole. She went into A-Town and she was like, at least I know today's not the day. And in the end, it was. Oh, it was so sad. It was so sad. But again, we'll see if Michael ends up reversing that and, you know, bringing Dionne back home. Okay, so next up on the list, we have Tazer. Young Tazer is a roadman. He is a gangster in South London who's trying to make a name for himself with his younger group of gangster boys, other gangster members. He has his own little pocket of gangsters in the ends. Can you tell I'm not from South London? Can you tell? Okay. But yeah, Tazer is a phenomenal character. Oh my god, Tazer is such a badass because he's not really a good guy. Actually, he's not really a good guy. He doesn't have these, you know, pure intentions by any means. He actually wants to create an empire for himself. He was influenced by Krazy, who kind of helped raise him, I guess, or was like an older brother figure to him when his mother disappeared and he was being raised by his grandma. And so he learned a lot from Krazy, who was a really powerful figure in South London in that scene. But he wants to, you know, stand out on his own and do his own thing. He wants money, power, and respect. That's the mantra that him and his boys have. And so he's roaming around the streets of South London causing havoc and chaos. And he already has his powers when we're introduced to him on the show. He's been learning how to use them for the last couple of days, and so he's pretty much ahead of the game in comparison to all of the other main Supacell superheroes. But he is, of course, using them for all the wrong reasons, out here killing people left, right, and center, killing all of his enemies. Because he's able to disappear, he has the power of invisibility that gives him the edge above everyone else. And so it's really cool to see how Tazer uses his powers on the show, even though it's like for all the wrong reasons. He's killing so many people. He has no morals, okay? But it's really cool. Like, he's a really cool character. And I'd be interested to see, you know, how the character starts to change. If he even does, honestly. If he does, as he becomes more of one of the good guys. We shall see. But in the meantime, one of the best parts of Tazer's, you know, character arc is, of course, this idea that he is in Krazy's shadow, and he kind of wants to come out of it and be his own man and be the leader of his own gang. And he was managing to do so just fine until Krazy got out of prison. My guy was supposed to be in there for 35 years, but somehow he managed to get out real early, and he starts off by asserting his authority when Tazer steals some of his gear, some of his drugs. Listen, I'm not familiar with this world, okay? But he steals some of his gear, and so Krazy comes in, okay, with his gang, and they're looking for blood. And unfortunately, one of Tazer's friends ends up getting almost killed by Krazy. And so he's in the hospital, and Tazer's seeing red, and he's like, I'm going to kill this man. I'm going to put this man in the ground today. And so that starts off a whole war between the two gangs. And of course, through this storyline, you have Rapman giving us an insight into gang culture in South London. I'm sure it's a very sanitized and simplified version, but this is something that Rapman explores in his work often, as we saw in Blue Story as well. And it's really, you know, interesting to have that be spotlighted in British media by an actual, you know, black creator, right? Like, from his actual perspective, it feels so much more authentic and grounded and realistic. And even though I'm not, you know, close to this culture myself, you know, I of course know of it, and I've seen things, you know, from this city, and I'm just like in awe of the fact that Rapman was able to make this Netflix series that dives into some of the difficulties that black people and people of color face in the ends, okay, in these council estates, and how this cycle of poverty and drug abuse and addiction and violence and brutality and criminality just is perpetuated in these communities. And the beginning of this cycle is something that we see through the character of AJ, who is of course Andre's son, but we'll get to that in a second. But in the meantime, when it comes to Tazer, you know, this is already a lot of drama. This is already a big headache before we even come to the crazy revelation, the crazy reveal that Krazy, who was wild just as a regular old human being already, is actually a supe. Oh, he is actually a supe. When the gang descend on A-Town at the end of the season, and you see Tazer there with his electric scooter, ready to kill Krazy as he promised, they have this final showdown in A-Town. And just when you think the gang has a leg up because they're all supes, innit? Like, how can you really go up against the gang? They're superheroes. Don't be ridiculous. Well, guess what? Krazy himself has a few tricks up his sleeve because he's literally rogue. He's literally rogue from X-Men. He is able to absorb other people's powers. The way that my jaw was literally on the floor when I saw Krazy's eyes glow amber, I said, oh, it's so over. Oh, it's so finished, because he's literally the last person that you would want to have powers. And the fact that Krazy, at the first opportunity that he had, Krazy slit every single one of their throats. Every single one of them was killed by this devilish man. And then he got to Tazer and just kept shanking him. Literally just kept stabbing him over and over again. Like, he was evil. He was pure evil. What an incredible villainous character that was amazingly portrayed by Getz. Like, hats off to him. But of course, in the end, he was disposed of by the secret organization who no longer had use for him after he failed to get the gang in. And again, another lesson is learned there, because you have these black superheroes who turned to the dark side, and they were working for the secret evil organization that was trying to round them them up like animals. And of course he met a horrible end and was killed when his usefulness had run out for them, because they had just been using him. He was disposable to them. They didn't value him as a human being. They were just using him to round up the others. And it just goes to show you that his loyalty for them was entirely misplaced. He should have been loyal to his community. He should have been loyal to his community, reaching out to the other supers to kind of get together to fight against this horrible organization. And that is another fundamental lesson to be had here when it comes to this series overall. Now, Krazy was already a horrible character just as it was, you know, as a gang leader, but on top of everything else, he was also an abuser. Yeah, he was also abusing his girlfriend, who happened to be Sabrina's sister. And yes, Sabrina is the next sup on our list. Now, she is a really hardworking nurse who works in an NHS hospital, and she has been putting her all into her job and has received no recognition for it. But one day she finds herself blessed with the power of telekinesis, and that kind of throws her off. It kind of plagues her mind. And this all happens when she finds out that her boyfriend was cheating on her, and she's able to shove him against the wall without even touching him. But later on, she also finds herself using these powers to protect her sister from a horrible, abusive man who tries to sexually assault her on the street. Now, she ends up killing this man, but there's no evidence of this the next day because the secret organization has already disposed of all of the evidence, including his body, because yes, he was also another sup. So this is just kind of showing us how big this issue is and how many people on these streets of London do have these powers. She managed to escape with her and her sister's life, but she's traumatized as a result, and that does mean that she isn't able to perform as well in her job, which, you know, she fears is going to cost her her job after all the hard work that she's put in the last couple of years. But thankfully, she's still recognized for that hard work. Now, I found this storyline to be a little bit confusing, if I'm being honest, because initially at the beginning it's clear that they're trying to show that due to racism and, you know, racial discrimination, Sabrina hasn't really been given the same opportunities and chances of promotion as her white counterparts, despite the fact that she has, you know, worked doubly hard. She comes in really early, leaves really late, and just has exhausted herself and put everything into this job. And, you know, that her patients love her, and she's a really valuable addition to the organization, but she just hasn't been recognized for it, right? So that's the lesson there. But, you know, after she has that mishap where she almost kills one of her patients and does a poor job getting bloods from another one, she's then promoted, which is a little bit of a confusing message. I think they should have just, you know, stuck to the plan and not given her the promotion to really hammer home that message that they were trying to send, or just abandon the message overall, like pick one. But the combination of both was a little bit confusing and I couldn't quite see the point of it. So ultimately she is promoted, but that's like the least of her concerns, because remember, she has superpowers, and so crazy things are happening left, right and center. And on top of all of that, her sister has been kidnapped. Yeah, her sister was kidnapped and taken to the facility by Krazy, who ended up being an op in more ways than one, and that's because they thought that her sister was the one with the superpowers and not Sabrina herself. So she ends up going to Michael and the crew because she wants their help to try and get her sister out of there. And so if we're continuing with the ranking, I would say when it comes to Sabrina's storyline, I would put her down as second so far, like right under Tazer. Tazer's was the strongest so far. Then we have Sabrina, then we have Michael, who pissed me off for way too long for me to put him any higher. But then next up we have Andre. Oh, Andre, poor old Andre. Andre is just a father who wants to do right by his son, but unfortunately, because of the criminal record that he has from, you know, horrible misunderstanding from when he was 18, he just has limited opportunities to, you know, pursue employment, gainful, reliable employment to support his son. And this is, of course, spotlighting issues with the justice system in this country and in many other Western countries like this, and also the difficulties that people can have when they have a criminal record in finding employment, you know, being employed and avoiding reoffense. And it's a really important and powerful statement that the series makes through the character of Andre, because he was innocent from the beginning. You know, he didn't actually have the drugs himself when he was 18. It's just that he let the wrong person into his car and he ended up suffering the consequences for it, not only by serving the time but also afterwards, because he's not able to get any work. And so he finds himself going through some Luke Cageification okay, because yeah, he's essentially the Luke Cage of the group, and one day when he's trying to, you know, get some funds from an ATM, he ends up, you know, bashing it open and getting some money out of that. And it's all fun and games for a while. He's able to buy nice stuff for his son, but unfortunately the bailiffs come. Unfortunately the bailiffs come and knocking at his door, and he has to give all of that money away. And you know, for me personally, I would have paid off my debts before I went out there buying new stuff like new phones and Gucci and Dior and that. Like me personally, I just would have paid off my debts. Or like I think he was a little bit fiscally irresponsible, but I understand that he wanted to, you know, treat his son. He wanted to bond with him and show him a good time because he's felt, you know, inept and kind of downtrodden as a father, and he's feeling really insecure about his lack of funds. If he thought he felt insecure before, when those bailiffs came and his son witnessed him being shaken down by them, that was the lowest of the low. And I think that was really effective in showing just how devastated and embarrassed and horrified Andre felt in that moment. And so it was really believable that he would be convinced to work for the bad guys so that he can have a stable income. Not to mention they actually threatened his son as well. So I think that was a believable turn. Even though it was quite quick and abrupt, I think it made sense because, oh, that moment when the bailiffs came a knocking and his poor son AJ had to witness him be, you know, mortified like that. Yeah, that would change me too, actually. That would make me make some difficult decisions as well. Now, ultimately, Andre does see the light and he does join the good guys, but this is even before he's seen what's become of his son AJ. Because AJ was continuously approached by these horrible men, these horrible gang members who wanted him to join them. But the only thing that was stopping him from joining was his dad, because his dad was always there. And when they approached him, his dad even, you know, stood up to them and said, "Leave my son alone. Leave my son alone. You have nothing good to offer him." But unfortunately, because of all of this superhero mess, you know, there were times when AJ came a knocking and his dad wasn't able to answer. Like that one time when he was just flat out exhausted from using his powers, that he was literally dead to the world. And when AJ knocked on his door, he couldn't hear a thing. And so AJ turned to the gang. AJ turned to the roadmen, and then in the end we see him shotting. Oh my god, we see AJ shotting on the streets of A-Town, selling drugs to sex workers and to drug addicted folks, and it's just bad, man. It's just, oh, my poor baby AJ, it's just bad. I was devastated to see this, but again, it's all part of the commentary, you know, showing the world what happens, how these things start. So adults that are watching this could perhaps see the story play out and look out for their kids, and kids who are watching this for fun can maybe see the signs. Maybe it could save them from following this dark path. So all in all, when it comes to Andre's storyline, I would put him above Sabrina, actually. So far we have Tazer, Andre, Sabrina, and then Michael. And to finish off, we have, of course, Rodney, my guy Rodney, who straight up, I'll say right now, is my favorite character. I thought he was such a brilliant, hilarious guy. He has this incredible Cockney accent that is almost extinct at this point, but bless him, I really loved Rodney. He is just a downtrodden, mixed race drug dealer in South London. He's just trying to make a quick buck. But we also learned a little bit of his background, because it turns out that his white mother had moved on along with this other white man, and they're living in the suburbs in this upper middle class area, and they're living their life. Like, they have this massive house and they have their own little Aryan race family, and Rodney has been left behind because his mum's new man is an out and out racist. He's an out and out National Front racist. Like, he's literally rejected Rodney from his family because he's half black. And that was tragic to me. That was horrifying to me. When Rodney is pleading with his mum to let him stay and she refuses, I said, what? I was so sad for him. It was horrible. So yeah, on the surface of things, Rodney is a really funny character. He's not the sharpest tool in the toolbox, okay? But he's, you know, getting by, making do with his bestie Spuds, and they're living together. Like I said, trying to make a quick buck, trying to make it out here in these streets. But when you do get that scene with his mother, you get a glimpse into his backstory and his complicated relationship with her. It just really endeared the character to me even more. And through the character of Rodney, you have an exploration of the mixed race experience, because he is the only mixed race guy of the Supacell super gang. And it just goes to show that his experience is unique to that of his black teammates, because he has this white mom who is doing well for herself, okay? She's living in this nice upper middle class neighborhood, but she has left her son behind. And by the way, this is why I always say that it's important for Hollywood to spotlight the mixed race experience as being distinctive from the black experience. I think it's something that happens more naturally here in the UK, because we deem mixed race people to be mixed race and not black, whereas in America everyone's just called black. That's a discussion for a whole different day, but it's important to have this distinction, because in the character of Rodney we see a completely different experience that also bears exploration. Now, Rodney's power is super speed. He is the Flash of the group, and I love the way that he uses his superpowers. I love that the first time he discovered his powers, he ended up all the way in Edinburgh. That was hilarious to me. That was so funny. And I love the kind of joy and excitement that he has from using them. But he, of course, just like Tazer, ends up using his powers for evil. He's using them to sell drugs more efficiently, and that puts him on Krazy's gang's radar, which is how he ends up connected with them. But his friend Spuds, who is constantly reading comic books, and he knows what's good, he knows what's up when it comes to comic book lore, he's trying to persuade Rodney to be a better man, you know, to use his powers for good, to save the world. And Rodney's like, nah, I just want to make a quick buck, I don't care about all of that. But in Spuds, you have a character who's kind of like us, like he's kind of like the viewer, especially those of us who have been immersed in comic book movie lore for the last 15 or so years. It's great to have a character who's like aware of these things. Like, he refers to Rodney as the Flash. He knows about Marvel and DC, and it's just a sort of nod and wink at the audience to the big main comic book movie franchises that have dominated pop culture in the last couple of decades. But in the end, we see Spuds be beaten up bloody by Krazy's men, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. This, of course, breaks Rodney's heart, and it motivates him to join the team, to figure out what's going on with the Supacell superpowers, and to get to the bottom of this deep underground organization that's trying to control them all. And so here we have our Avengers, our South London Avengers, who have assembled in A-Town to take down the bad guy. And that's pretty much where the series ends. Like, the series leaves us with a massive cliffhanger. We have a whole bunch of questions that haven't been answered yet, and I'm frothing at the mouth, rocking back and forth, looking at my watch, counting down the seconds until we get a season 2 that can answer these questions. But overall, guys, like I said, I had a great time with this series. I love the fact it exists. I love the fact that we're getting to that point in pop culture, in British media history, where we're seeing more black representation, but the diversity of the types of stories that we're seeing is particularly exciting to me. The fact that we have this show that is essentially Top Boy mixed in with Misfits, mixed in with Luke Cage, mixed in with all sorts of other shows, Umbrella Academy, all these shows that we've seen in pop culture as as of late. It's just kind of combined together to create this really grounded, realistic, typically British, but also has that spark of like supernatural sci-fi elements that just give it that special edge and just make it such an interesting addition to the superhero landscape that we have right now. Now, the show itself isn't perfect. If I was to nitpick, I could say that I wish there were a few more action sequences. I wish the choreography was a little bit more Hollywood. Like, even though the rest of the series is very British, it's very grimy, grounded and realistic, and I love that. I wouldn't change that part at all. But when it comes to like the action sequences and the superhero powers, I would have liked a little bit more Hollywood in there. Hollywood knows how to do superhero powers very, very well, and so it would have benefited from that, and that probably would have needed a bigger budget. But still, I think they did a very good job with the budget that they had. The CGI was really strong, even though it was used quite sparingly, and so I was very impressed on that front. I also would have liked to have seen a little bit more from the evil organization. I would have liked to have found out a bit more about their motives, you know, what's really going on. And I know that they left us with a massive cliffhanger, but if they just fed us a little bit more info to what's going on there, I would have been happy with that. I mean, like I said, it's very much giving strong They Clone Tyrone vibes, and that whole film kind of wrapped up the story really well and gave us an interesting motive for what was going on. So I would like to see a little bit more fed in there, but like I said, season 2 will probably explore that. And by the way, Netflix I'm saying season 2 like it's been confirmed, but as of yet I don't think it has. Yeah, Netflix, I need you to greenlight season 2 immediately. This is not a request, this is a demand. You need to give us season 2 of Supacell immediately. And so guys, with all of that being said, I'm going to be giving Supacell an 8 out of 10. So that's it from me, guys. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on Supacell, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of the series down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.